Hi, today I'm taking a look at a port. The port in question is Ramos Pinto's LBV 2015. Ramos Pinto, like many port houses, has quite a long history. Started by Adriano Pinto in 1880, and they built their reputation largely producing wood-aged tawny ports. Although more recently, actually, their reputation across the board has been improving, I think, enormously. The history behind the house means that they've managed to acquire 4 rather good quintas in the Douro Valley, and they have actually been at the forefront, I guess, in the 1970s of revolutionising the way the viticulture in the Douro Valley. They were one of the first houses to plant, instead of on terraces on the hillside, actually on vineyards created as banks with the rows running up and down the hillside. And also they were one of the first houses to plant varietally. So actually, unusually for this, I've got a breakdown of what the grape varieties in this particular wine are. The more recent history of the house sees them taken over in 1990 by Roederer, the champagne company. And I suppose that's been a contribution to the improvement in quality. The wine is made, I guess, more or less the way it would have been back in the 1880s. Everything's hand-picked. I suppose these days it goes into shallow cagettes, and the fruit is therefore likely to arrive at the winery with less crushing through being in deeper containers or something like that. But actually, once it gets to the winery, it's foot-trodden in a lagar. You have 3 to 5 days worth of fermentation with plenty of extractions, with that sort of continual pushing down of the cap of skins back into the fermenting juice. So you get lovely extract. The wine is then taken and aged in 15,000 litre oak tanks in Via Nova de Gaia, so down close to the coast where it's a little bit cooler, with that aging not necessarily giving oak flavours, because that'll be old oak, but allowing a certain amount of oxidative maturation and a bit of development there, to ensure that when the wine is released, it's ready to drink straight away. This particular wine was bottled in October of 2019, so with just over 4 years after harvest, having been blended in the May of that year. What else to say about it? I mean, as far as the grape blend is concerned, this is 62% Touriga Nacional, 28% Touriga Franca, and then the balance of that is, I think there's 3% Tinta Barocca, 2% Susau, and then actually they say 5% of old vines. So presumably they're not entirely sure what the varieties in that old vine portion is, but that's quite unusual in my experience for a port house to be able to tell you with that sort of accuracy what's gone into their wine. So as I say, the wine ferments. I forgot to say that it's fortified after 3 to 5 days, but I guess that's pretty obvious. It's fortified up to 19.5%, according to the detail on the bottle there, and that should that's slightly lower than some ports, so they'll go up to sort of 20-21%, and that should allow the fruit to show through very nicely. The wine is a traditional LBV, so as a traditional late bottle vintage port, it's unfined, it's unfiltered, and that is to enable the wine to carry on developing in bottle. So if you wanted to keep this for 10-20 years, it would last that time. It has the alcohol, the acidity, and the depth of fruit to enable it to age for that period. But it should be accessible and ready to drink on release. That's the style there. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? First thing to say, it's got a lovely depth of colour. I more or less can't see through it there. It's practically opaque. There's a purple note to the rim. It's quite a vibrant red, and with very little agitation, it's showing its viscosity very clearly. So that's the combination of the sweetness in there, the alcohol and the tannins, giving it that viscosity. So let's have a look at the nose. The nose, I mean, it's not been in bottle a long time, to be honest. It's about 4 years, coming up for 4 years, 3.5 years. And it's still showing the spirit that it's been fortified with quite clearly as a sort of a maybe slightly doughy sort of note on the nose. And that's covering a really lovely, ripe, juicy fruit. There aren't actually sort of hints of over-ripeness. What there is there's a fresh sort of red fruit in a bright mulberry sort of style. And that's heading into a more black sort of Loganberry, boysenberry, you know, they're still very juicy black fruit note. There's perhaps a tiny touch of anise spice at the end, but not an awful lot of that. As I say, the whole of that is somewhat obscured by the spiritiness on the beginning there. Tasting the wine, there's a lovely freshness, and actually something worth remembering about the Douro Valley is that its altitude enables it, because of cool nights, to help the grapes to at good ripeness to retain lovely freshness. And actually, I'm almost salivating here. This is slightly mouth-watering, which is lifting the fruit really nicely. There is a sweetness. The wine doesn't seem quite as sweet as some ports will be, but I should imagine it's still up somewhere around 100 grams per litre. Sorry, I don't have a firm number on that one. The tannins are smooth and rounded. They're not particularly woody or grainy. They have a little bit of presence, but they're not drying or astringent. And I suppose actually that's the sweetness is married with that is stopping them from being at all harsh. But then you've got all this sort of red and black fruit at the beginning that's very lively. There's I suppose a slightly licoricey core, slightly impenetrable fruit there, lovely depth. And then at the finish, lovely fresh acidity is allowing that sort of red, juicy, ripe mulberry sort of fruit aromas to come through again and give a lovely length to the finish. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a wine that, you know, perhaps the nose could do with it being in bottle for a couple of years longer before drinking. But actually, on the palate, that's drinking really nicely. It would pair very nicely with salty blue cheeses, that sort of thing. It has the power and the richness to work very well with them and to counter their flavours. So yeah, Ramos Pinto LBV 2015. Thank you very much for joining us. Do join us again. Bye now.